What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Sunday morning. It's an early one for me today. Made sure to get my ass out of bed on time today so I could knock out the article, get some content up on the site. Didn't have to, kind of rushed it at the end there, but it wasn't crazy. It was a nice, calm morning. Got to have my coffee, got to take it easy, dig into this slate. So everything's up on the website, rotoscouts.com. Make sure you're checking that stuff out. Looks like we got a good collection of folks hanging out in the chat already. We got Calvin in there, Larry's in there, Travis, Stephen Leibowitz, Mamba's hanging out. Good group in there so far. Appreciate that, Mamba. Thanks. I'd like to think it's a good article. I don't know about great stretches it, but if I can hit consistently good with upside for great, I'll take that any day. Fanatic, what's going on, bud? Good morning. Welcome. Michael C., what's happening? Welcome, welcome. SMP's in the chat. It says morning to everyone. It's awfully nice. Hopefully everybody in there deserves that good morning. What's been going on today? Anybody up to anything interesting? Any of you guys like super early risers, like these 4 a.m. people who get up and like consider that the actual like morning appropriate time to wake up, get a ton of shit done by like 7 a.m. and then they're like, oh, I've been productive all day already, when the rest of us are just like rubbing our eyes and getting out of bed? Anybody out there that kind of a person, especially on weekends? It's always weird when somebody's out like 6 a.m. on Sundays, Larry. Whew. Man, can't do it. I had the alarm set for 6, and I hit the snooze like 6 times. I work on Sunday. All right, that's a different story. Yeah, if work dictates it, that's a different story. Travis says he gets up at 5 a.m. every morning in the West Coast. All right, yeah, I was talking about that the other day. That's just still always strikes me as weird, like living out west and like football starting at 11 a.m. and being over in the early afternoon, or like Saturday Night Live's on at like 8:30 in the morning, in the evening on Saturdays, and then you could watch that and then go out. Like, it's just very strange. High stakes dad, 5 a.m. every day, internal clock. Sometimes it's brutal. Oof. Man, I couldn't take that. My internal clock goes all over the place. Like some days I am up at that early, but it's just because like I will randomly stay up till 4 a.m. Then it just cycles down. Some days I'll sleep in, and with this stuff at least, it keeps me on a somewhat regular schedule, having to do or not having to do, choosing to do all the content and everything, and making sure I'm here for the afternoons and everything. So it's got me on something of a normal schedule. When I was just kind of like freewheeling, it was all over the place. There have been years where I've been just a total mess. Could be Travis grew up in Toronto, so it's taking some adjusting to get used to the West Coast. I'm horrible for sports, so yeah, that's gotta be weird. Oh yeah, Larry. Larry mentions my my post in the Discord at 1:30 a.m. I was up for several hours after that. Larry, I think I cracked 3 o'clock yesterday. I'm working on like 4 hours of sleep. I'm usually up till at least like 2 or 3 on like a normal night. Like I typically only need like 3-4 hours. I could get through a workday on 3 or 4 hours. Prefer like 5 or 6, and I love to sleep. So like if I got nothing to do, I'll just keep going and hit that snooze button. But yeah, I can function on less, so I'm usually up pretty late. Anyway, interesting slate today. Let me finish loading up the lineups. Really interesting slate. Tons and tons of pitching available today. I really like the depth of the pitching today. So we're got a better day for arms than we've had in the last couple. I think it limits the bats in a lot of spots, but I think there's interesting bats kind of because of that, right? Because we know that some of these pitchers are not going to succeed. We've got a few guys who have been up and down like crazy all year long. Some of them are some of the top projected pitchers of the day. But I think that's going to lead to some like under the radar, not necessarily sneaky, because some of it's with really good teams, but I think, less popular, somewhat under the public radar type of options, where like the public will be on just a few really concentrated spots of ownership at the plate, I would expect. I think we can spread out. So I think you spread out some pitching shares among the many premium options that we've got here. And then I think we want to cast kind of a wide net where we're getting to the popular chalky teams, and we'll talk about who they're likely to be. Whoops. Shit. Sorry, I just pasted something in the wrong spot. So we'll talk about who those teams are likely to be. And we want to have them, but I think there's good justification for making some key pivots or, considering other teams for high percentages of ownership within a portfolio of lineups. So we'll get into all of that. I'm just getting these last few lineups loaded in here, and then I'll click you over to the better view so that you don't have to stare at me. And pop back into the chat and say hi to anybody who else just popped in the next minute or so. Bear with me just 1 sec, gang. I usually try and get all these done before jumping on, but I wanted to start the show. I was a couple minutes behind starting the show, so I didn't want to just sit here doing this and then start the show even later and keep everybody waiting. Might as well jump on, say hi. Looking forward to watching some of these games today. Definitely going to watch baseball. Don't know what else I'm going to do today. I'm sure we'll get out with a dog walk. We usually like to go for like nice little hour-long kind of patrol stroll, me and Joker. Like to get him his exercise. Get out there, check out the neighborhood. He's funny though, he's feisty. Like a lot of times I'll let him. I'll just say, all right, you take us where you want to go, and he'll decide which turns we make and so on, and I'll just stroll behind him. But then like he won't want to turn for home. After like an hour, we'll be a couple miles away, and all right, buddy, let's time to turn back. And I'll be way the hell away from home, and I'll make a random right turn, and he'll know that I'm going to be looking to turn back, so he'll just plant his feet and just stop dead. And he's like 100-pound dog, so like, it's just all of a sudden like jerks back on the leash, and it's just like an anchor just hitting the ground, and as I'm walking in a different direction. So he's really stubborn in his old age about doing stuff like that. Or like if we're standing on the street corner and he wants to go one way and I go to do the other, same move, he'll just plant his feet and just won't even start. And like then I look kind of like the asshole, like come on, like pulling his dog on the sidewalk. And like you don't want to do that too hard, but you've got to get him to move. So there's like a really fine line that I'm sure a lot of people out there don't necessarily try to discern in judging somebody who does stuff like that. Or not does stuff like that, but somebody in that situation. Anyway, I think we got all the lineups going. Let me get this thing set up here. Jump back into the chat room. Travis, Joker's a mutt. He's a bunch of different herding dogs all mashed together. So we was when I got him, my sister has had for the last dozen or so years or more purebred Australian Shepherds, and they're great dogs. Really like the dogs, but I'm less into them needing to be fancy show dogs, and I just like the fun dogs. And mutts are typically up for adoption and much less expensive to get. So I got a mutt. When I got him, it was like on those pet finder things, or maybe you don't. You see like oh, this is a mix of, and they give you a couple high-end dogs that people are typically looking for. So he was billed as an Australian Shepherd mix. We did the DNA testing on him, and it's like tiny little sliver of Australian Shepherd in there, like 5%. There's Boxer in there, which is weird, but there's also like Norwegian Elkhound and Sheepdog and all kinds of stuff. He's a big hairy mess. We'll get him on camera one of these days. All right, let's dive into this thing. Should be good to go. Stretch that a little bit, I think. It's not necessary. All right, let's dive in off the top. This one, bunch of herding dogs. That's a cool mix of breeds. Bring some extra treats on your walk too. Yeah, he loves that. He goes up to random people like all over the place, just asking for treats. Like if you're sitting on a park bench and we're walking by, he will definitely go up to you, thinking that you've got something for him. Like he thinks everybody's his friend. I could run him for mayor. Like people stop us on the street and love him too. He's just got that look where it's like he looks like a dog that like would be on a show, right? He's like black and hairy. He's got the white patch on his chest and just like this big smile and just goofy face. Like people literally stop us on the street like, oh my God, can I say hi to your dog? It's amazing. He's way more popular and friendly than I am. All right. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Enough talk about dogs. Enough talk about Joker. It's 11:28. wasted the first 15 minutes of the show when I'm definitely going to go too long, and we've got a 135 start. So let's get into this thing. Kyle Hendricks on the bump for the Cubbies. Not that interested in Kyle Hendricks. Soft tosser, 14.4% strikeout rate, a 2.64 ERA with a 4.89 xFIP. That's the much more honest number. Hendricks isn't a bad pitcher. He certainly doesn't get himself into a lot of trouble. He doesn't typically get completely destroyed, but the 4.89 xFIP is accurate here. 5.3 walks is good. 0.94 whip is very good. This is fairly small sampling, 47 and 2/3 over 8 starts. In years past, he's been in similar levels though. You know, low walk rates, but also low strikeout rates, middling xFIP, middling ERAs. He's likely to give up 4 or 5 runs to the Yankees. It depends on whether he has that day where he gives up 8 to 10 runs, or whether they get into the bullpen for another, they get 4 or 5 off Hendricks and then get into the bullpen and keep it rolling and get to 10 runs, get to 12 runs, something like that. I don't necessarily see this Yankees team doing that. It's just tough to expect with their low end on base percentages. They're not overly aggressive strikeout rates for a lot of these guys, but there's some. And then they're just inconsistent. They're inconsistent low-end hitters this year. So I don't love this lineup. I don't love going to that. But there is power potential. There is the idea that Hendricks is a soft tosser who's going to be going up against a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, who hit one to the moon last night and then hit another one off the foul pole. That shot that he hit off the third deck and left was just amazing. Just an absolute moonshot. So Stanton's in play. Rizzo's certainly in play. He's got to get his season kind of back in gear. 11 home runs, a lefty targeting that short porch, though, off a guy who throws the ball, as hard as some guy at the Jersey Shore boardwalk in a radar gun thing right now. I think there's upside for Rizzo. Glaber in the leadoff spot is definitely an option. Volpe dropping back down to 8, which is probably, I think you just keep him down there. Like for right now, let's just keep him down there. I know I was saying the other day, like, hey, he's earned his spot back in the leadoff role, but he dipped immediately on going back to the leadoff role. So let's keep him in the bottom of the batting order. Let him do his thing back down there. Plenty of upside for him in terms of counting stats. He was rolling along. The batting average was coming along. He was getting on base. So keep him there. I like Higgy at the bottom of the lineup with his 13.4% barrels, 52.6% hard hits that don't typically turn into home runs. He's got 4 in 144 plate appearances, but nice sturdy contact from a cheapo backup catcher type. DJ LeMahieu, bad season, cheap pricing for a guy who has produced over time. Billy McKinney, very cheap for a guy who, in a small sample this year, has produced, but was kind of a washout as a high-end prospect. Josh Donaldson has 14 hits on the year, and 10 of them are home runs. 71%, I think that was when I put it in the article. That was, somebody tweeted that last night. Kudos to them for pointing that out. Whoever's random tweet out there I read. I try to cite those when I read them and then spout the stats the next day. Sometimes they escape my memory, and that one did. Who said that? Yeah, just a weird little season for Donaldson. He's just selling out for power. He's basically a home run or a zero. Harrison Bader hitting cleanup. He's miscast in the cleanup spot, but he's a productive guy. I would probably have built this lineup with Bader in the leadoff spot, followed by Glaber, followed by Rizzo, and Stanton in the cleanup spot, but what do I know? Stanton's very fine for a two-hitter here. That's great to have that power in the 2 spot, but just if it results in having Harrison Bader in the cleanup role, it's less effective in the long term, I think. Anyway, I think the Yanks are playable against Hendricks. I don't want to get to Hendricks against the Yanks. Could have a 6-inning clean start, 4 or 5 strikeouts kind of a game, and put up a little bit of value there. So, maybe you don't completely cross him off the value list, but there's plenty of other options here. I don't think you need to go to Kyle Hendricks, 14.4% strikeout rate guy. Domingo Germán on the other side, interesting mix of results. I mean, he obviously had the perfect game. Then he came out and followed that up with 4 and change innings of mediocrity in his next start. 6,800, 8,100, you can definitely throw darts with Domingo Germán, but it's not like he projects well here. Pretty low-end projection on a day with a ton of available pitchers who project significantly higher. I don't know how many times I need to go to Domingo Germán here. He could have a good game against the Cubbies, but overall, 4.52 ERA, a 4.15 xFIP, a 23.5% strikeout rate. I've talked before about him being an excellent strike thrower, and that hasn't changed. That's where he gets his quality, 13.7% swing, 30.1% CSW, but he's given up a lot of premium contact, 8.8% barrels, 4.25% home runs, to a team that hasn't been outstanding for power this year, but certainly has some good home run hitters in it and then has some underperformers. So I think there's definitely some opportunity for Herman at price, but I think I'd rather, if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather probably take shots at him with the Cubbies bats. Not that that leads into a ton of Cubs bats, but I think at value pricing, I think they're okay in this spot. I don't love Tauchman. He's getting on base at an okay clip now. He was getting on base at a much more aggressive clip about 2 weeks ago. They dropped him into this leadoff spot, and it's not really working out. He's a quad A type player. He's not a major league talent, really. But if he's in that spot, you can play him at 31.28. Nico Horner, probably the better leadoff man. He's got a lower on base right now, but he steals. He gets on base, in an okay clip. He's the more traditional leadoff hitter at the very least. I understand what they're trying to do with Tauchman because he was getting on base, but it just hasn't really worked out. Ian Happ would be an interesting option in the leadoff spot. He consistently gets on base at like these 376 clip that he's got this year. And he hasn't really been hitting for much power this year or doing much else. At 114 WRC plus, he's been providing some scoring and some run creation. But it would be interesting to see him in the leadoff spot for this team. I'm not sure why they don't do that. But in this form, Horner's playable, stolen base upside, Happ is certainly playable, power upside for sure from either side of the plate here. I like Ian Happ quite a bit. He's kind of underperformed this season, but in seasons past, he's been a decent home run hitter and has always been good at getting on base and creating runs. Seiya Suzuki, cheap for his talent, should have a better output in terms of the ISO and his home runs. 50.5% hard hits, 8.6% barrels this year. Strikes out at a 24.8% clip, but walks 11.2%, so decent on base. But the home run output and the ISO, it's another guy who just should have better than that based on how hard he hits the ball. So a little bit of luck probably factoring in there, a little bit of happenstance. Definitely upside at price for Seiya Suzuki. Cody Bellinger, I think, was it Larry just saying it before in the chat? Think Bellinger's coming to New York. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. I think a lot of teams are going to be in on him, though. I think he'll definitely be traded from the Cubbies. But I think, I could see the Rangers getting in on him. I could see, a lot of the contending teams getting in on him. So even the Padres could be a good fit for him, to be honest, which would be just another Padres kind of a move. But the Yanks are definitely interested. So I would be in favor of that. It's not often that you get a player of former MVP caliber coming in pretty cheap as an option like that. I'd like to get a commitment. I think he's only on a 1 year. So I'd like to get some kind of commitment of a re-sign or, at least some interest in word that he's interested in that. Because if I acquired him, I would want to keep him, I think. I think he's unlocked the return to form this season. 17.4% strikeout rate. I've talked about it before. That's down 10 points from last year, 10 points from the year before when he struggled after the dip from being an MVP. This is back to what he struck out around as an MVP. He's hitting for power, 9 home runs, 11 stolen bases, a 195 ISO, 125 WRC plus. Missed some time with injury, but is having a very good year. I'd actually be really curious if he had the additional 100 and change plate appearances that he missed. I'd be really curious to see where he would be. Chris Morel, another good home run hitter in that lineup. 15 homers on the season, 313 ISO is ridiculous, a 140 WRC plus, all in 194 plate appearances. Really rushed out of the gate to all that power and then has cooled significantly since. But at 47.35 with multi-position third base outfield, I think you can definitely play him. Patrick Wisdom is the other interesting bat for power late in the lineup. 191, 276, 454, but 14 homers and 218 plate appearances, 263 ISO. A significant power bat later in the lineup against the guy who has been giving up a lot of power this year. So I think the Cubbies, they're on that list of potentially under-the-radar teams. I haven't looked at ownership, but I can't imagine they're going to be all that popular in this spot. It's not like they got a runaway train of a run total or anything here. And there are some teams with... Actually, no, there's only 2 teams that are 5+ today. There's a handful of teams in the mid-4s. The Red Sox and the Guardians are the 2 teams above 5. Guess which one of those 2 teams I like? We'll get to it in just a second. So in this one, some bats from both sides. Only minor interest in Domingo Germán. More interest on the DK slate at 68 for sure. I think he's more in play as an SP2 over there. I don't know how many shares I get to him at 81 on the FanDuel slate. Single pitcher with all these options. I don't really need to get there. Hendo, if you're inclined to go that way, but like he's more than Domingo Germán, like with probably a lower upside. Clean innings is what you're looking for from Hendo for a cheap price, but it's not pretty. It's not ideal. Athletics and the Red Sox. Red Sox have an opener starting this game. I forgot I changed it out. It's irrelevant. He's going to go like an inning, and then he's going to hand off to Chris Murphy here. Murphy's a lefty, 13 2/3 innings, all in bulk relief work, 23.2% strikeouts, 1.79% home runs so far, a 1.98 ERA. He costs $5,900 on DK, where I think you'd make the play with the bulk reliever rather than on FanDuel. I don't see it. It's just not enough upside, even against the A's. Lousy lineup that we target all the time. I just don't love this play when it's not at that dead min 4,000 price. It's, if it's something that you do as part of your portfolio, certainly this is a spot to do it in. He's got a good enough strikeout rate in the small sample. He's likely to pitch a handful of innings. He's facing the Oakland A's as a lefty. There's plenty of upside in that combination of factors. I just don't love him at price in this spot when I don't know for sure that they're going to target 5 or 6 innings. When a guy starts the game as a traditional starter, you know that the team is hoping that he goes 5 or 6 innings and won't stand in his way. In this bulk relief role, I'm not quite as sure of something like that. So it's what gives me hesitation on firing away with an option like this, even against the A's. I just want to see, in these bulk relief appearances, 3 1/3, 2 2/3, 2, 2, 3 2/3. And it's not like he got blown up in the ones where he went 2 or 2 2/3. 2 of them he gave up nothing. And then the second 2 inning start, he gave up 2 earned runs on a home run, struck out 1. But the point is, I can't rely on 5 innings here even. So it's dicey at 59. If it was 4,000, it would be a more viable DraftKings play. On the other side, JP Sears, pitcher we've used a few times this season. I don't know that we're going here today. Not projecting well at all on the model, and he's projected well on days when he's been successful or had the looks of being successful. Just the wrong spot going up against the Red Sox in Fenway here on a deep pitching day anyway. I don't think you need to scrape the bottom of the barrel here for Sears. He's been effective this year, 4.09 ERA, 4.83 xFIP is probably the reality though. 23.2% strikeouts is good, 5.2% walks is good. Giving up a lot of power though. 12.4% barrels. 4.96% home runs in a 94 2/3 inning sample. It's not like it's only a handful of innings. So I think we know who JP Sears is here, and I think we're just going to target him with Red Sox bats. At 65, if you want to throw a few darts on DK, it's all right. I'm not going to have any of them on FanDuel. If it burns me, it burns me. That's fine. Not expecting it to. I don't think we'll have that problem. Rob Refsnyder in the leadoff spot. They made the correct decision rather than hitting him third. They've got Rafi Devers hitting third. That makes a ton of sense. Refsnyder, I know, is good against lefties. As we've talked about him before, he is a career backup journeyman utility man type. Certainly not a 3-hitter, but in this leadoff spot against the lefty, he makes some sense. He's raking this year against left-handed pitching. It's in the article, so I'll pull it up real quick. Overall, 271, 394, 357 with a 115 WRC plus against lefties this year. 356, 466, 466 with a 110 ISO, so no power, and a 164 WRC plus. So this is a table setter. This isn't a guy who's going to knock in a ton of runs. This isn't a guy who's a Jorge Soler who just hits endless home runs against lefties regardless of their quality. This is Rob Refsnyder. Expectations need to be tempered. He needs other players on this team to drive him in, but he is a good correlated scoring option with Justin Turner, Rafi Devers and all his power, Adam Duvall and all his power upside. I know Duvall hit 4 of his 5 home runs in that first week of the season, then got hurt and has only won since coming back, but he's still got a 116 WRC plus. He's still contributing to this lineup even if he doesn't hit home runs, and I don't think the home runs are gone by any means. Still a 13.7% barrel rate. Against JP Sears, there's enough upside for Adam Duvall here. Yoshida's been productive. 313, 381, 481, 36% better than average creating runs. I like Yoshida there. Jorge Alfaro is apparently on the Red Sox. I'd forgotten that or didn't know that. I thought he was somewhere else earlier in the season. Did he just join? Did he get DFA'd somewhere and just join the Red Sox, or am I misremembering that? I forget. Anyway, Jorge Alfaro's got the idea of power. Very cheap. 3,200, 2,300. More interesting on DK where you need the catcher position. He's viable over there. in small doses. Less so on FanDuel, but he's only 2,300. There's at least the idea of power upside against the lefty. Enrique Hernandez, Christian Arroyo, and Yu Chang, kind of low end on the bottom there for the Red Sox. On the athletic side, knowing that we're getting a lefty probably starting in the second inning, it's an odd choice to have 7 lefties in this lineup. But that's what they did. It's a strange decision. It's not like they've got a ton of better options, but there's a couple righties on this team that should be in the lineup. Maybe they're not paying attention. Chris Murphy's definitely left-handed. Double checking, definitely left-handed. Yep. Anyway, okay. So the lineup that I didn't want to go to already is not looking all that great. There are a couple good options in there in Seth Brown, maybe some Brent Rooker, maybe some Ryan Noda. The rest of it is kind of garbage. Tony Kemp off the top has a 66 WRC plus in 251 plate appearances. Veteran guy that we've seen before. We know Tony Kemp's not that good at this. Noda gets on base but strikes out aggressively. So he's giving you a lot of middling performances and zeros, along with a couple spots of upside. 130 WRC plus is very good, 381 on base, but just because he gets on base doesn't mean somebody's knocking him in. So that results in 3s and 6s in your lineup FanDuel scoring. If nobody's knocking him in, or if he's just striking out 4 times, you're getting a big fat 0. So the actual production is pretty inconsistent. Seth Brown, their best actual bat, good producer last year, hasn't done much this year, missed a ton of time with injury. Rooker obviously had that tremendous March and April, hasn't done much since. Blade, Cody Thomas, Manny Pena, Jace Peterson, Tyler Wade, pretty weak from the bottom end. Wade at least is the dead minimum on the FanDuel slate with triple position eligibility. That's just kind of like a Swiss Army knife. Like, it's a utility play. You just have a position open, you say, all right, I can stick Tyler Wade in there at a cheap price if there's nobody at that price like in the lineup that you want to go to. You can use him as a wraparound if you're getting carried away with building A stacks. He's not a good player. He's probably a quad A talent, if not a minor league talent, a full minor league talent. But at that price, with triple position eligibility, there is at least some argument to be made for a guy who has a capable hit tool, little bit of speed, no real power, but like a tiny dash of power. He was projected to be like a 8 to 12 home runs, 20 stolen bases type in a good year, and never reached that form as an actual player. So a low-end option late in the lineup. So this one becomes a lot of Red Sox enthusiasm, but I think they're going to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular stack of the day, going up against Sears with the highest run total of the day. Like I said before, only 2 teams totaled over 5. Red Sox are one of them. Guardians in the next game are one of them. Then there's 3 teams in the 4.7 range, like between 4.7 and 4.8, and every other team falls below 4.5. The Brewers, Twins, and White Sox were the ones in the 4.7 range. So it's a light day with all these pitchers. It's a light day for hitting. So I think the Red Sox, even with popularity, belong in a pretty good portion of lineups, but it's one of those spots where if they get wildly popular, you can roster and undercut, and then you're spreading shares to some of those other teams, the under-the-radar teams that we talked about. That's kind of where we're getting those shares from, because we still want to have a bunch of Red Sox. I think we can get to some additional shares from undercutting Guardians in the same fashion. We'll talk about that in half a second. To wrap this one, only very, very minor DK interest in JP Sears. Capable enough as an SP2, really bad spot. Don't like it at all. Red Sox bats enthusiastically, especially with this version of the lineup with all these lefties, knowing that they're going to face a lefty for a handful of innings. No real interest in the A's. They'd have to get a lot of work done in the first inning and then against the bullpen late. I don't really like that spot at all for the A's. Contrarian, sure, but very low end. Cheap, sure, but very low end. All right, Royals and the Guardians. This is going to be another frustrating Guardians day. I can just totally feel it. They're carrying a second highest projection on the board in Vegas, second highest implied total, rather. Going up against Ryan Yarbrough, 12.4% strikeout rate in 26 and a third, 2.65% home run rate, 85.2 miles an hour exit velo, 27.9% hard hits. There's good in here, there's bad in here. 6.15 ERA, a 5.95 xFIP. Got hit in the face by a line drive and missed a bunch of time. This is his first outing back. He was making some rehab appearances. He went, 6 innings, I think. 6 innings in his last start. It was on Tuesday, so he's probably stretched out. 17.2% strikeouts in 80 innings last year, 17.9 in a full season in 21. Don't love it. I don't know. Going up against an active roster for Cleveland that has an 88 WRC plus with a 142 ISO against lefties this season, but only an 18.5% strikeout rate. I don't think Yarborough's on the board for value. It's debatable on DK at least at 5,200. Assuming 5 innings, a shot at a win, an unlikely shot at a win though, maybe you can get away with it, but low-end strikeout guy, I don't love that play, even at 52 on DK. 57 on FanDuel, I don't really see it. Could he succeed? Sure. The Guardians have been really, really bad this year. It's more likely to be a clean innings situation than it is a high strikeout situation, but I still don't love it. At the same time, I don't love going to the Guardians here despite that high total. I know I've said that to, varying degrees of success over the past week or so. They certainly had a great night last night. What was it, 10 runs on 18 hits, I think? They had a good night on Thursday, but really it only amounted to 6 runs and not really bendy DFS scores. So you wanted them last night. There's been a lot of nights where, even with a strong Vegas projection, this team's just not coming through. Stephen Kwan off the top is a flawed hitter. If he's not having balls drop in and a strong BABIP and getting on base, he's a Jeff McNeil type. Needs to correlate, needs to get on base and correlate with guys behind him. And then when the guys behind him are all in bad form, like Amed Rosario this year, it doesn't help his upside. So it's just really low end, 2 top plays in Kwan and Rosario there. You get quality in Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, obviously. 133 WRC plus, a 124 WRC plus, plenty of power, even a little bit of stolen base upside. Andres Jimenez maybe coming on a little bit, 7 home runs, 15 stolen bases on the year, but still only a 95 WRC plus, 139 ISO. Has just popped into relevance a couple times recently. So belongs on the list of guys that you would play. A guy who is expected to turn into kind of a star, or at least like a very good player in the middle infield. Still plenty of time. He's young, but this is not a good step forward that we thought he'd be taking this year. Freeman, Brennan, Straw, Gallagher, kind of weak form at the bottom end here for the Guardians as well. So it's 1 through 5, really, if you're stacking Guardians. This is your stack. There's not a lot to love about this. Mix and match plays at best. Straw's a slap hitter, speed, defense type. It's 10 stolen bases. That's good, I guess. Will Brennan, 2,900, 2,300, 94 WRC plus on the season, 5 homers, 6 stolen bases. It's pretty weak on the bottom. Doesn't really lead me to Yarbs, but it kind of strengthens the position of a $5,200 Yarbs play if you're looking for the 5 clean inning play. It's just not overly strong. It's a pretty thin path to success doing that on DK with him today. So I don't love that option. But I don't really want to get over the top with Guardians. And if they're popular, I think it's an easy one to just kind of leave to the public today. Have some of the top end, maybe undercut and spread out to some of those other options. Get to some value Yankees, value Cubs, value other things we'll talk about. I think they're good spots. The Royals are not one of those good spots. The high strikeouts, just a ridiculous output from this team this year. They've been super targetable in terms of just quality with pitchers in a lot of slates. They don't get on base. They don't really provide much correlated scoring. There are 2 guys above average for run creation in the lineup, and one of them is Freddie Fermin, who's made 102 plate appearances. It's just not good. Michael Garcia is the other one with 103 WRC plus and 231. Bobby Witt is a star. I believe that Bobby Witt's a star. 14 home runs, 27 stolen bases. It's star caliber output. He's up to a 98 WRC plus, but has been below average for run creation all year long. It's weird. Weird output for Bobby Witt. 4,600, 3,300 though. You can easily get to him at those prices at shortstop. Sal Perez is a star catcher at 4,300, 2,800. 15 home runs. You can easily get to Sal Perez. MJ Melendez, just acquired him in the Dynasty League. I believe in this. I've been talking about it so much that I figured I had to go get the guy. He's signed in the 17th round for $7 for the next few years. So easy to cut bait on or just have on my bench if he doesn't work out. But I believe the power's there. I believe in this hitter. He's had great numbers in the minor league, still very young, had a decent year last year, and has fallen apart at the plate largely this year. 208, 289, 337, 129 ISO, and 6 home runs. The last 2 numbers there just still do not jibe with an 11.2% barrel rate and 51.2% hard hits. It does jive with a 29.5% strikeout rate. He needs to make more contact more frequently, but this contact should result in a better ISO, better home run output. So I'll play some MJ, but again, the bottom of the lineup here just completely dies on the vine like we see basically every day with this team. The 1 through 4 is okay. 5 through 9 is just lousy, low end. So you're mixing and matching if you get over the top with Royal stacks, but I don't think it's justified to get over the top with Royal stacks because Shane Bieber projects really well for me. 9,000, 9,500. One of those uncomfortable guys I referenced at the top of the show. He's been all over the place this year. All over the place. The way I tried to put it in the as a joke in the article was if this was an Indiana Jones movie, it would just be a spider web of red lines all over the quality map. Because he has just been all over the damn map this year in terms of his output. Some days he goes 7 innings, has a good game, strikes out like 8 or 9. Some days he goes 2 innings, has a terrible game, 4 innings, has a terrible game. Those haven't been all that frequent. That's more a Chris Bassett special. Bieber's been more the 5 or 6, gave up 5 or 6 runs and only struck out 4 type of performances on the lower end. I think there's still quality here, but it's hard to see. 19.3% strikeout rate, 10.5% swinging, 29.5% CSW. All so far down from even last year at 25, 13.8, and 31.4, let alone 2 years ago when he was way better. But against this Royals team, I can't ignore how well he's projecting. I can't ignore the price at 9,000, 9,500. I do think there's at least upside for 7 innings, even if he gives up 3 or 4 runs. I think there's upside for strikeouts here. So I'm going to play some Shane Bieber. I'm going to be unapologetic about it. 9,000, 9,500. The price is right for how he's been pitching. I'm fine with going to this option. If it blows up in my face again, it blows up in my face again. It hasn't been great. It certainly hasn't been great or fun to roster a lot of Shane Bieber today. I won't get completely carried away. Like I said, there's a lot of pitchers I like on this slate. So no real interest in the Royals, minor hedge stack position. No real interest in Yarbs, but I get it at 52 on DK if you wanted to throw the dart. Shane Bieber for sure. Enthusiastic about that spot on both sides. And then mixed interest in the Guardians. If they're popular, easy to undercut in my opinion. Vegas likes them. I like them a lot less. Model likes them a lot less. And they've been underperforming all season long. And Yarbs, as flawed as some of these numbers are for like DFS purposes and in a small sample here, like he's been better over time. Not great, but better. Capable. Below-ish average, but not like lousy for power. 84.8 miles an hour of exit velo last year, 85.1, 28.2% hard hits, 31% hard hits. When he makes mistakes, they go for home runs, but he's good at limiting hard hits, good at limiting barrels. I don't love the upside for Cleveland. All right, let's move on. We got to pick up some speed. It's almost noon. Cool. All right, Blue Jays. Whit Merrifield up top, like I called for in the article. Gotta love it. So Whit Merrifield, Bo Bichette. The article, the projected on Schmebs had Bo Bichette, Whit Merrifield, and it didn't make any sense. Why would you do that? It makes no sense to me. 342 on base, 349 on base. So they get on base at the same clip. Merrifield actually has speed, and Bichette hits for power. You want the speedy on base guy ahead of the power guy. That's how these things work. So Merrifield, Bichette, Vladdy, Chapman. No George Springer. He's on the paternity list. So downgrade to the top of the typically really good Blue Jays lineup. But I think they still look pretty good here. The issue is that they're going up against Tariq Skubal, who is very, very good. 4 innings in his return to action the other day. Clean innings, struck out 6. The xFIP for that game was 1.84, but he pitched clean, didn't walk anybody. It was a really good return to form. I think we're expecting him for about 5 innings. He only went 4 in the last start, but was obviously rolling. I think there's upside to this projection or beyond for the 7,700, 8,200. This is a 5-inning projection. I went into the model and I just specifically told it, hey, 5 innings, show me what he's going to do. So even against these Blue Jays, that's a pretty playable number in my opinion. And I think there's a little bit of upside for more. Not that I think they're going to let him go much beyond like 80, 85 pitches, but I think in that number of pitches on the right day, Tariq Skubal's got upside for strikeouts. He's a good strikeout pitcher. So I think there's good reason to go to him in moderate doses. Don't get carried away with it because the innings are probably or are definitely going to be capped at like 5. But I think he's on the board. Blue Jays going up against him. I think you go to the Stars, some of the right-handed power. with like sneaky guys like Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk both being in the lineup. There's a lot of power in both of those bats. They play the same position at catcher on both sites. They're very cheap. I think they work well with the top end. Santiago Espinal, Kevin Biggio, Kevin Kiermaier, not the best bottom third in the world for this Blue Jays lineup. Also supports the upside for Tariq Skubal. Like Kevin Biggio, not a good hitter and strikes out at a 30.7% clip. That's a good combination in Skubal's favor. So I don't love this. These guys are okay. It's really this part of the lineup. Varsho out of the lineup against the lefty. So some interest in the Blue Jays as like a mid-range priority stack, but not one we want to get carried away with. You do see some power here. Skubal's giving up home runs over time. So there's power in Bo Bichette, Vladdy, Chapman, Danny Jansen. But it's not a great spot for Blue Jays. You're getting them at fair prices. I'll say that much. Bichette, Vladdy, both cheap on DK. Priced for a few $100 cheap on FanDuel as well. I know the performance hasn't been great for Vladdy, but everything about the profile is still completely intact. Bo Bichette, I'm not exactly sure why. I guess has he dipped in recent games? He's probably dipped a little bit in recent games that I didn't catch, but still an outstanding season as usual for him. And now the uncomfortable situation of having to roster Chris Bassitt at 8,400, 9,200 with a great projection against the lousy Detroit Tigers. This one's probably going to be painful. Bassett's the guy. He's been very good or a complete disaster, and not many in between starts. 22.1% strikeouts, a 4.09 ERA, a 4.43 xFIP, a 3.83% home run rate on 9.3% barrels. Kind of a mixed bag of quality for Bassitt this year. But when he's on form, he works deep into games. He's one of the more reliable guys to give you a shot at a quality start. He projects really well against the very lousy Tigers team. They did get Riley Green back on the left side of the plate. They've got Kerry Carpenter back in the lineup on the left side. Akil Baddoo's in the lineup. It's a semi-okay looking version of the Tigers lineup. I'll give them that much. But I still think that this is a Chris Bassitt spot, as uncomfortable as that might be to say. So I'm going to be going there. I don't blame anybody who wants to go in different directions. He's hard to trust, for sure. I'm kind of hoping that impacts his public ownership. I'm not sure what it's sitting at. Let me see if I can cheat on that. I won't give the number away, but I want to see where... just get a gauge for where RG's got him in their ownerships. He is not in the top 4 and at single-digit ownership on the FanDuel slate. I would expect to be similar, low middling popularity on DK. So I think he's a good option. 8,400 on the DK slate, 92 on FanDuel. If it burns me, it burns me. I'll embrace the risk at low ownership for a start against the Tigers. I will always attack the Tigers until they have massively improved this team anyway. Just like the A's, just like the Royals, other teams like that. They're just on that list. So I trust Chris. That was almost a tragic mistake. I almost said the words, I trust Chris Bassitt. That would have been ugly. I think Bassitt is viable here. I think this projection is not unrealistic. Tigers side of things, probably a good spot to take a few hedge stacks. They'll probably not be crazy popular. McKinstry, Riley Green, Torkelson, Kerry Carpenter, and Akil Baddoo are my stack. I would, if I'm getting over the top with a bunch of stacks, certainly you can include Javi Baez in that. No real interest in Miggy Cabrera. Eric Haas hasn't been good at all this year, but does have the memory of all that power from a couple years ago. Andy Ibanez, better against lefties. Not a great bottom 4 hitters here. Javi's not great. I like these 4. Plus Akil Baddoo. It's decent value pricing. There's good reason to believe that they could, if they're going to get to any good starter, or, is he a bad good starter or a good bad starter? It's kind of like what I was saying about Heaney in the Discord yesterday. I'm not sure exactly which one either one of these guys is. I lean toward a bad good starter with Chris Bassitt here, just on his tendency to get blown up, but he pitches well more often than he gets blown up. So I'm hoping for that version today. I'll have plenty of him. So some interest in Skubal, knowing that he's got an innings cap. Definite interest in Bassitt with some tempered enthusiasm. Minor hedge shares of Tigers with a focus on 1 through 4 plus 6. And then some interest in the Blue Jays, mid-range priority, focus on 1 through 6. Boy, do we need to pick up speed. All right. Bravos going up against Zach Eflin. Bryce Elder on the mound going up against the Rays. Interesting pitching duel. I think you can draw bats on either side of this one. The Braves are a team that I'm hoping doesn't get carried away with public ownership because, as you can see, they project fairly well for me. They're projecting for power. It's mostly on the back of how productive they've been this season rather than the matchup against the pitcher. Eflin's been really good this year. 3.24 ERA, a 309 xFIP, a 26.1% strikeout rate, only walks 3.9%, only giving up 2.61% home runs, 87.1 miles an hour of exit velo. There are no problems in Zach Eflin's line. And if you want to play him at 10-5 against the Braves, more power to you. I have no issues with the play. I would make the play on a shorter slate, on a different slate, on a slate with a different mix of pitchers available. I just don't know how much I want to target the Atlanta Braves, even in a pitcher's park, even with a good pitcher. I feel like he's probably overpriced by like 1,000 on both sites for the opportunity against the Braves here. It's just not a great spot. I would not be shocked by any means if Zach Eflin goes out and has a very good day. Even has a day where he's challenging the slate leaders with his score. Wouldn't totally shock me. I just don't know that we've got that value baked into the price going up against the everyday except for Sean Murphy version of the Braves lineup. They've just been too good. They are too good. It's not even a thing where like they've been good, but it's not predictive. I predict that this team will continue to roll through the second half of the season because these guys are just really good at baseball. Ronald Acuna Jr., 21 home runs, 41 stolen bases, just absurd production from the top spot. Ozzie Albies, one of the best second basemen in baseball, 22 home runs this year already, 5,800, 4,000. Back to being somewhat, well, no, those are high prices. They finally started to respect Ozzie Albies. It was Riley's 51 that caught my eye there, and I was like, wait a minute. 5,136 for Riley is appropriate for the output we've had from him this season. 16 home runs, 103 WRC plus. Hasn't been bad by any means. By any normal measure, that's a productive season so far. But by what we expect from him, that's a little bit underperformance. So I expect him to have a big second half, and that could absolutely start today, or just any given slate upside. He's never bad. He's just been, a little bit underperforming, but he's never bad. 10.6% barrels, 47.2% hard hits. That's great. I'll take that any day, especially at a discount. Matt Olson, been outstanding. 29 home runs, a 316 ISO. No need to sell him. 6,200, 4,400. Just pay it. It's worth it. Travis d'Arnaud, totally capable backup catcher. He's not Sean Murphy, but he's a reasonable facsimile. 7 home runs in 142 plate appearances this year. Hit mid-teens home runs last year. Good hitter. Marcelo Ozuna, Eddie Rosario, Orlando Arcia, Michael Harris, probably the best bottom 4 in baseball. Just ridiculously talented. 17 home runs, 14 home runs for Ozuna and Rosario. Arcia is creeping up with 7 home runs, a 112 WRC plus, still has triple position eligibility on FanDuel. And Michael Harris, going to be another player in this lineup over double-digit home runs, possibly after today, but certainly soon after the All-Star break, came roaring back to life. 1 through 9 for the Braves, even against Eflin. I will take my shots. I hope at low ownership for the public because I like the spot. I will have maybe a couple Eflin shares to hedge that off, but it's not going to be something that I come up with naturally in the model, just again, based on that price and that projection. I will come up naturally with shares of Bryce Elder. He projects pretty well here for 8,000, 9,700. A guy who's good at limiting power upside. You can see the 1.93% home run rate on the season. One of these guys that cuts launch angle, cuts barrels effectively. 2.45 ERA. The 401 xFIP is probably the more truthful number. 19.3% strikeouts. Not a big-time strikeout guy, but I like his potential for some clean innings. 1.76% home runs yet last year on 5.8% barrels. So demonstrable talent. 9 starts, 54 innings. So again, not huge samples, but that's approaching a full year sample. So I think it's real that Elder keeps home runs, keeps the ball in the park. He'll need to pitch cleanly. He'll need to find his strikeouts against a team that has some aggressive free swingers in the lineup and also has some guys who are excellent at avoiding the strikeout, like Yandy Diaz, like Wander Franco up at the top of the lineup. So it's not an easy spot for Elder, but I think he's got the talent to pitch through this. It's, it's kind of like getting Eflin at better pricing, basically. Eflin's a better strikeout option, certainly, but he's in the worst of these two matchups. I think the Braves are better than the Rays. I know the Rays rolled through the first half of the season. They hit the skids a little bit. It's not like they've been bad recently, but they've certainly cooled a little bit. A lot of these guys in the lineup have kind of returned to earth. So I think they're very playable against Bryce Elder, But without the idea of a bunch of home runs, I don't totally love it. You do get Jonathan Aranda joining the team at the dead minimum. Went over, I guess, in the 4 plate appearances. I think they just called him up yesterday. Second base and third base eligible on the DK slate. Second base eligible on the FanDuel slate. Just another guy who's expected to perform in this lineup. Hitting 5th today. Interesting spot for the dead min on both sides. If you're going to raise, I would definitely include him. Obviously, you're including all these guys. Yandy Diaz has been spectacular this season. Wander Franco. Luke Raley's been outrageous this season. 15 homers, 9 steals, a 309 ISO, 163 WRC+. If you saw that coming from Luke Raley this year, kudos. I didn't. 16.8% barrels, 48.9% hard hits. Dynamite season so far. Randy Arozarena is a star. 16 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 145 WRC+. Isaac Paredes, Jose Siri have been really good this year. 15 homers, 16 homers. Taylor Walls, Christian Bethancourt have both cooled. There's reason to be skeptical about like this bottom half in terms of what they do the second half of the season, how they keep this rolling. But there's talent there for sure. You got 2-3 position guys in the lineup now with Paredes and Walls, whose names mean the same things. It's an interesting lineup. I'll give him that much, but I kind of like the elder side. He's cheap enough that I can get to him on both sides. He's got the ability to limit home runs from this team. They could go out and blast 3 long balls off of him. I'm not saying he's going to be immaculate no matter what, but I think there's enough upside to go to elder and to kind of temper expectations in the Rays, especially if they get popular, which I doubt they will be. I think there's good reason to consider them like just a lower mid type of priority stack. 4.20 run total, which is, I know, again, is the higher of these 2 run totals. Atlanta comes in with a 3.89 in Vegas. I think that's a little low. I could be totally wrong here. It could defy the model. It could defy expectations with how good the Braves have been and are. Like I said, Zach Eflin is a good pitcher. He's been pitching well. He's on form. It could completely go sideways and not work out. It could just be a game where they score 3-4 runs, win the game. Somebody hits a home run, but it's not a good DFS spot. I'm going to be a part of finding out. I'm not going to get crazy carried away with Brave stacks, but I think it'll be easy to get over the field, and I think that's where I want to be. I'm going to run out of time for building lineups, though. Phillies and the Marlins. Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola. I think you take shares of both of these pitchers. Nola's cheap on FanDuel. Luzardo's cheap on DK for their talents. 10-3 for Nola. 10-3, 9,400 for Nola. 9,900, 10-3 for Luzardo. Kind of opposite pricing. Both guys pitching pretty well. Nola's taken a dip in terms of overall quality, but I think he's fine. I'm not really worried about Aaron Nola. I think he figures it out. I think we've seen some blips. I think he's kind of overcoming them. 6.6% walk, still doesn't get himself in a lot of trouble. A 1.10 whip, 11.8% swinging strikes, 29.9% CSW, 25% strikeout rate, and typically pitches very deep into ball games. 113 innings in 18 starts, typically among the league leaders in innings pitched. So I like the idea of depth against a weak Marlins lineup. I like the idea of finding some strikeouts here. So Aaron Nola, for sure, my top pitcher actually on the day in projections. So I really, really like the spot for Nola. I'll have tons. Luzardo on the other side, 28.6% strikeout rate on the year, a 3.49 xFIP, 3.32 ERA, 14.2% swinging strikes, significant swinging strike rate for Jesus Luzardo. He's been really good. I like the idea of getting to Luzardo. He's had an issue with barrels. Hard hits are at 39. That's right around the max capacity for getting over. That's a little bit too many hard hits. 39's okay. 89 miles an hour of exit velo. The 10.8% barrels is concerning when you go up against the lineup with Kyle Schwarber in it, with guys like Trey Turner, Nicky Castellanos, who could certainly turn on one in the right spot, but no Bryce Harper. Took one off the elbow last night. Appears to be okay in the long term, but not playing today. So it's a downgrade to the Philly stack overall. This is the form that I had it in. Bryson Stott in the lineup instead of Brandon Marsh. I was expecting Brandon Marsh in this spot, but Stott also makes sense. The weak bottom third going up against the lefty. We prefer the bottom of this lineup greatly when they go up against righties. But no Harper's a ding for sure. Luzardo's got good upside here. He's not at the top of the board, but he's definitely a mix in, especially if he goes low owned. Good pitcher against a team that is effective against lefties, but not great against lefties. And with no Harper in the lineup, there's certainly an upside for them. If I'm going to Phils, I'm certainly including Schwarber, Turner, Castellanos. I like Alec Boehm. It's a weird spot to get him in the cleanup role, but I get it against the lefty. He's been productive from the right side, 9 home runs, a 104 WRC+, 3,800, 3,100 for a cleanup hitter. You could do a lot worse. Real Muto and Stott are both playable, so it's really 1 through 6 for the Phils. Going up against Nola, Arias, Soler, De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, Garrett Cooper. 1 through 5. If I have shares of anybody in the bottom portion of this lineup, I feel like I've made a mistake today. Gene Segura, bad. Joey Wendell, not good. 94 WRC plus, I'll give him not good. Nick Fortes, Dan Meyer, I just don't need these guys. I'm not going to go over the top with Marlin stacks against Aaron Nola anyway. I get it if you want to take up a contrarian position, attack some ownership probably, attack a guy who has been a little bit up and down. Do it with these top 5 guys. Do it with the actual good performers in this lineup, guys who have potential, guys who have some power. Good hit tool in Brian De La Cruz, good power in Sanchez. Garrett Cooper's been rolling over the past 30 days. He's up to 12 home runs, a 105 WRC plus. Obviously, these two are stars. Kind of easy. So, tepid interest in Marlins bats. A little bit more interest in Phillies bats, but not a lot. Definite interest in Luzardo. Enthusiasm about Nola. Haven't been in the chat for a minute. Let's see what's going on. Andrew Jennison says Harrison got scratched. Okay. Let me grab some updated lineups. So that Phil's lineup now goes Schwarber, Turner, Castellanos, Bohm, Realmuto, Stott, Sosa, Marsh in the lineup. So that's a little bit of an upgrade. Even lefty. I think that's probably a little bit of an upgrade. I don't dislike Brendan Marsh. He's been super productive this year. I don't have his lefty splits off the top of my head, but hitting 8th, what are you really sacrificing? And you're really just hoping that not Alec Marsh, idiot. You're really hoping you just get him against bullpen arms twice if they happen to chase Luzardo. Come on. I know you guys can't see this, but Fangraphs isn't helping me. There you go. I hate it when I type the name and it doesn't pop up the suggestion and you can't move forward. I love Fangraphs. Give them money. But that is one annoying thing about their search box. Against lefties, Brandon Marsh this year, 200, 257, 354, 154 ISO. A little bit of pop. Hasn't been good in terms of run creation. Hasn't been consistent. It's only 71 plate appearances. For the career, not a long career. 257 plate appearances, 4 home runs. Yeah, not pretty. 214, 254, 290, a .076 ISO. So he's been a little bit better against lefties for power this year, but not great. Maybe I'll unwind a little bit of what I said. 2 home runs, 2 of his 4 home runs in his career against lefties have come this year, though. You're hoping for the bullpen spot against a righty. Let's be honest. Diving into this one, Reds kind of come back to earth in terms of projections against Wade Miley here. Miley's typically not one to get blown up. The Reds have a 4.50 implied total. They're dead on the money line on 100 minus 100 in the money line. So it's kind of a pick'em game in Vegas. Not really seeing any upside whatsoever for Wade Miley. 15.1% strikeouts, 3.36 ERA, but a 4.95 xFIP. The xFIP, again, is the more honest of those two numbers. Not a high strikeout guy against this frisky Reds lineup. I just don't really see it, and I kind of think if they're going to be low owned, I kind of want to get to some Reds bats in this spot. Again, not that Miley gets blown up all that often, not that he allows a ton of power. They've just been so interesting, and they score runs and create runs in interesting ways, like stealing second, third, and home plate on 2 pitches. Did you guys see that yesterday? I linked it in the article. If you didn't see Ellie De La Cruz do that yesterday, I don't care if you click away from this show to go watch it. It was that good. Come back. When you get back, hit the like button. But you can't tell me that Ellie De La Cruz is not an outrageous baseball talent with a great mind for the game, just based on what he did yesterday. That was unbelievable. The kid is a tremendous baseball player. Larry referenced my 1:30 in the morning note in the Discord. That was to let everybody know that I jumped into. I had every now and again I jump into breaks. I had talked about it once or twice on shows before. I'm not a big card collector, but I got kind of back into it a little bit just because I think breaks, the concept of that, is somewhat interesting. So I just was sitting here 1:30 in the morning, literally sitting in this chair last night, doing my thing, and I was just like, yeah, you know what? Ellie had that awesome night. I wonder if I can somehow scoop another Ellie rookie, a good Ellie card. I was like, let me see if there's any cheapo breaks where I can just jump in and somebody's got the high bid goes to the Reds and I can just buy the Reds for whatever price. So I did. And then the guy pulled an Ellie auto. So I got a solid little Ellie autograph It's like a $1,500 card if it rated out as a 10. So not bad for my $80. Decent little return. So I'm excited about Ellie, obviously. Definitely want to get to him, 6,145. I'm cheating. I'm looking at some ownership from RG, and it doesn't look like the Reds are going to be popular based on what they're thinking. So this is one of my teams that I kind of want to get to under the radar a little bit. Just a lot of exciting players, a lot of good contact, a lot of good power, good speed through the lineup. You get no Joey Votto, which sucks, but plenty of opportunity. Kevin Newman, kind of oddly miscast as a leadoff hitter with a 318 on base and 81 WRC plus in 222 plate appearances. Not a great bat, but doesn't really strike out. So a guy they're just looking to put the ball in play, maybe get on base for them to set the table from Matt McClain, Jonathan India, Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, even like Nick Senzel and TJ Friedel, even lefty for Friedel. It's not like it's an intimidating lefty. He's a good hit tool guy. So I can get to TJ Friedel from the bottom. I can get to Nick Senzel for cheap prices. I'd rather have Senzel, Friedel, and then Stevenson, just for my FanDuel purposes. But I think if you're on DK, Stevenson works in the 6th spot there. 7 home runs for him in 341 plate appearances this year. Not a tremendous catcher, but a playable one. So I'm kind of interested in the Reds at low ownership here. Again, not that Miley gets blown up. He very infrequently gives up more than 5 runs. But I think they might create a couple of runs here. I think we might get some steals, maybe a little bit of power. It's not one to go like, don't go out and build 150 red stacks just because I think it's an interesting under the radar spot. But like if the field's going to have 2 or 3, I want to have 10 to 12 in 150 lineups. Brewers on the other side going up against Ben Lively. Ben Lively's actually been kind of interesting this year. 6,600, 7,700. I think he's on the value board. Projects out okay for those prices. Not great, but okay. 46 innings, 23.1% strikeouts, 4.22 xFIP, 4.11 ERA. The problem is here. 5.13% home runs. Small sample, though. Only 7 starts, only 46 innings. And with this mix of hard hits, 88 miles an hour of exit velo, I don't know that this is anything beyond just a few mistakes that maybe he doesn't make today. Maybe. Maybe he does. So I think it's a both-sided situation, but Lively's on that value board. He could go out and have a good enough start with a handful of strikeouts against a Brewers team that we've kind of been targeting recently. Aggressive strikeout team for the most part. I like Christian Yelich off the top. He's having a dynamite season that nobody seems to want to think so. 4,400, 3,700. FanDuel's got the price about right. 11 homers, 21 steals, 28% better in average creating runs, hits everything hard. William Contreras, Jesse Winker. Let me see if this lineup's actually confirmed while I talk about it. I'm sure that it is. It looks basically like this. Adames hitting third, Jesse Winker, Owen Miller, Raimel Tapia, Brian Anderson, Bryce Turang, Joey Weimer. Kind of a weak back end. Any one of those guys could have a good game. Mid-range power, okay speed for everybody except for Anderson. But just an underperforming bunch. A lot of low WRC plus numbers here. A lot of weak home run output here outside of Weimer, who's probably the most interesting hitter in that group. 12 homers, 11 steals for him, and just kind of like an athlete when you look at him. A lot of these other guys, just kind of mixed bag of middling talent. At least you get multi-position out of them for cheap prices on the FanDuel slate. You can go there. It's just not one to get aggressive about, I don't think. I don't really love this Brewers lineup. So moderate interest in some Ben Lively value shares. Definite interest in some Reds, especially at the top end, the top 4, top 5. Brewers, only tepid interest. Couple of value shares is fine, but I wouldn't get carried away with it. 3 games to go, coming up on 12:30. That'll give us an hour to build lineups if we punch out around then. So figure if we punch out around 12:45, we'll still be okay. I don't want to fool myself about how quickly we're getting out of these last 3 games, especially with all this pitching to talk about. Let me grab the O's lineup. It looks like it just dropped recently. All right. Joe Ryan, another top-end pitcher. Not the top of the board, but 33 and change on the FanDuel slate. Definitely interesting to me. 94, 10-2. Like the price better on the DK slate, but he's earned enough faith to get to that 10-2 price and make it believable against a productive Orioles lineup. I think I'll take a both-sided approach to this one. I do really like this Orioles lineup. They've been performing, but I think Ryan is a very high-end pitcher. 27.9% strikeouts on the year, only 3.9% walks. I just love this combination right there. High strikeouts, low walks. You can be in my lineup basically any day. 5.8% barrels on the season, 3.42% hard hits, 41.5% 3.42% home runs, 41.5% hard hits. Those are a little high given the barrel rate being so low, but he's a fly ball oriented pitcher. So I get why the home runs might be up a little bit higher than you'd expect on just, a little bit of happenstance, couple of mistakes in there. This is a guy for sure that I think some of those home runs are just a couple of mistakes. 13.8% swinging, great swinging strike rate, very low whip based on the low walk rate. Really like Joe Ryan, like the opportunity for him to have a good start here. We've got the version of the lineup. Let's see. Cedric Mullins hitting 6th. Gunnar basically owns that leadoff spot now. He's been outrageous. 13 home runs on the season, 50.6% hard hits. Signs of a bigger second half to come. He's been great in the last, month and change? And he had all those positive indicators through those first couple months where it looked like he was struggling, but there was a ton going on under the surface and just has come roaring to life. So love Gunnar in the top spot. Still cheap at 47.34 too. Very easy to get to. Adley, Anthony Santander, even Ryan O'Hearn, 35.28. I'll still take the infrequent pop, the hit tool while it's working for those prices at first base. The lefty's definitely in play against Joe Ryan here. Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Jordan Westberg, Ramon Urias, and my favorite player, Aaron Hicks. I think you can go 1 through 9 in this lineup in various combinations. You don't want to get carried away with the bottom 4 hitters. Top 5 is the focus, but any one of these guys, especially in like a mix and match sense, going up with these top end guys, definitely in play. So not a high priority stack. I expect Ryan to be the successful side of this combination, but if I get 3 Ryan shares, I'll probably throw in like a half a Orioles share. As that maths out, somewhere around that kind of a ratio, I think is appropriate. So for every 6 Ryan shares, you get one Orioles share, something like that. Just a handful, but I will have some. Twin side of this, it's a little bit of upside for Kyle Gibson. Revenge game for Kyle Gibson if you're into narratives. Don't be into narratives. 6,300. Be into the idea that this is a guy who has been a good pitcher over time, not a high strikeout guy, but an effective enough pitcher over time to pay off a $6,300 price against a team with a 28% strikeout rate in the confirmed lineup. At $8,000 on the FanDuel slate, he's got the talent to pay that off as well. I'm not saying he's going to go out and strike out 12 and have a complete game shutout. I'm not saying he's not going to do that. But I think the more realistic expectation would be 2 to 3 runs, 6 to 8 strikeouts, 6 to 7 clean innings, or 6 to 7 innings. Maybe a win, maybe a quality start. Quality start probably more likely than a win. He could also go completely sideways and get totally lit up. We've seen Kyle Gibson do that plenty of times. So don't get carried away with it. But as a low-owned valued dart, I think there's a good upside for Kyle Gibson in this spot. Carlos Correa, Edward Julian, Byron Buxton, Alex Kirilloff, all capable bats off the top. That's a decent top 4. Correa struggled. Buxton hasn't been fully himself, but still has 15 home runs, 8 steals, and a 106 WRC plus with a 231 ISO. So I don't think he's dead at the plate by any means. 54, arguably a little bit high. 35, probably about right for what he's done this season, who he's been this season. But we know there's a bigger ceiling than that on Byron Buxton. Same thing with Correa, really. Correa is just cheap because he hasn't performed in terms of the triple slash. The power's been okay with 11 homers, 94 WRC plus, not where you want him, but hasn't been totally dead. So I think the price is at least okay. Kirilloff, good lefty bat. Max Kepler later in the lineup, good lefty power. 12 home runs on the season for Kepler. I really like him in lineups. I think you can grab him against Kyle Gibson. I think you can grab shares of Joey Gallo, certainly against Kyle Gibson. There's definite home run upside in some of these guys, particularly the lefties. But it's not a great Twins lineup, and there's certainly strikeouts there for Kyle Gibson to go find. So value price Kyle Gibson, some dart throws for sure. Don't get over the top with it, but he's one of the better cheapo options. Certainly one of the better guys below 7K on the DK slate, almost below 6,500. 8,000 on FanDuel, totally viable as a value play. Ryan, a little bit less on the projection relative to price, but definitely still on the board for me. I'll get to some Joe Ryan for sure. Orioles, minor interest in like the top end of the lineup with mix and match shares, but more Joe Ryan than Orioles, more Twins, more Joe Ryan than Orioles. Probably about level interest in the Twins stack and Kyle Gibson shares. About the same. 2 games to go. Yankees lineup should be fine without Judge. Dennis 4G says, if you make sarcasm funny, you won't need to clarify. Are you talking to me? Oh, all right, Larry C. If Terry gets to 12 Ryan shares, how many shares will he have? You dick. Dennis is a funny guy. Armand either breaks the slate or gives up slate breaking runs. Yeah, Chuck not wrong about that. Todd Strong says prospecting is fun. Made some good money on Carroll and Gunner. Nice. Buying Sal Stewart, Willie Vasquez, and Darrell Hines. All right. 3 good names to throw into the mix there for any of the folks who are into the hobby, as they call it. Fanatic says my doctor has a ball auto by Wilt Chamberlain that PSA authenticated before he bought it. It turns out it's fake. Oh, wow. I mean, once they certify it, like, that's on them. Like, how could they come out afterward and say it's fake and then it turns into a lawsuit? Holy shit. That's wild. That is nuts. Eric McQuarrie sounds like Eric went and watched that Ellie highlight. Yeah, that was sick, wasn't it? Just drove in a run with a single. Then in 2 pitches, stole second base. Then on the next pitch, stole third. And before the next pitch after that, stole home. Just outrageous. So good. Yeah, I mean, you got to file the lawsuit for sure, but it's just crazy that PSA reneged on what they said and is engaged in a lawsuit over it. Like, you would think, even just like reputation wise, you think that's something that they would just be like, all right, let's settle it. Let's not even get to that point. That's crazy. Sucks for that guy. I mean, obviously, that's a pretty nice piece if it was real. Anyway, let's get back into this, wrap up these last 2 games. We're coming up on only an hour to build lineups. 1:35 start today. The Cardinals against Lucas Giolito. Kind of a both-sided situation. Giolito doesn't project great. I like him a lot better at 8,800 than I do at 10,000 on the FanDuel slate. Just kind of mispriced for who I think Lucas Giolito really is, which is exactly who he's been this season. 25.6% strikeouts, 3.50 ERA, 4.23 xFIP. That is basically in line with what he's done in different spots over time. 3.53 ERA, 3.75 xFIP 2 years ago, 3.66 xFIP last year, jumped to a 4.90 ERA, strikeouts between 25 and 28%. This is just who Giolito is. He's a good second, third starter in your rotation. Not even third. He's a good second starter in a team's rotation. But I don't think he's an ace. We all wanted him to be an ace when he was a prospect. It didn't quite get there, but he's still really good. So I'll have some shares, but there's a lot of other pitchers that I like that we've talked about that aren't going up against the St. Louis Cardinals, which is just, even when they underperform, it's still not a great matchup. Throwing him into the buzzsaw of Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and then all these mix and match parts like Brendan Donovan, like Lars Nootbaar, like Nolan Gorman that they've got in this lineup, let alone Jordan Walker, let alone Wilson Contreras, who can contribute even though he's been inconsistent this year. I like the Cards. Maybe I like them a little too much. But if you look at the WRC Plus column over here, everybody in this lineup is above average for run creation this year. So, like, yeah, the team as a whole struggles to win ball games at times, but they are productive guys. It's a weird combination of factors. They should be a much better baseball team. I know the pitching's not great. They need a lot of help on the mound, but they should be a more productive ball team than this. Nate D says, I'm a little late. How's the New York weather? Right now, it is not raining in the New York area. It's a cloudy, hazy kind of day. Before we end the show, I'll jump over and check out the weather report. I know there are a little concerns. I would expect they're going to play. Just a guess. Interleague game against the Cubbies. Not easy to reschedule. So I'm going to guess on a Sunday they're going to try and get that one in. I don't know. We'll check the forecast in a minute. Chuck says, I think Giolito fares better than Cease did. It's interesting. I think Giolito's probably the better of the 2 pitchers. Cease is the better strikeout pitcher right now. I think Giolito's probably the more firm of the 2 pitchers, but they're fairly similar righties. I do like the Cards. Both-sided one for me, kind of in small, moderate doses overall on both sides of that, though, I think. It's basically the hitters that I named, but it's a 1 through 9 kind of a lineup, depending on the final form. Might be confirmed already. We're looking at a projected. Confirmed is, Nootbaar in the leadoff spot, followed by Goldschmidt, Arenado, which I actually like that trio in that order really a lot. Wilson Contreras, cleanup, don't love. Alec Burleson hitting 5th is okay, lefty against a righty. Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, I like those 2 players, 6-7, and then DeYoung and Jose Fermin. So, weak final 2, but 1 through 7 is totally playable. On the White Sox side of things, interesting version of the White Sox lineup with Zach Remillard leading off. No struggling Andrew Benintendi. I get what they're doing there. It's a righty instead of a lefty to lead off. Remyard's been okay, 340, 426, 415 in his 62 plate appearances, 3 stolen bases. Obviously getting on base at a decent clip, producing runs. Multi-position eligible at second and third base on both sites for cheap pricing. Kind of like that with Remyard in that spot. I wish he was leading into a guy who's been performing better in Timmy Anderson. We've talked about Tim a number of times. He and Benintendi have combined for 1 home run, and Benintendi is the one who hit it in like 600 and change plate appearances. Timmy's been bad this year. Love the player. Hope he turns it around. Believe that he will turn it around, but it's been ugly. I do think you include him in stacks if you're going to White Sox, but I would be limited. I would go to some shares of Remyard. I would mix and match those two, and then combine those guys with Lubob, with Eloy Jimenez, Andrew Vaughn, Jake Berger, all their quality, all their home run upside. A lot of home run power from those guys. 69 combined home runs. Obviously, Lubob's got 26 of them, but Eloy Jimenez and Jake Berger have incomplete seasons. Berger limited opportunities. Eloy Jimenez had a long-term injury for a little while there. All these guys well above average for run creation. It's like you would think in 100 more plate appearances for each of those guys, you're pushing into the mid-70s for home run totals probably, approaching 80. There's a lot of power there. Oscar Colas, decent power prospect. Hasn't done much yet. 100 plate appearances, 1 home run, .065 ISO. But we looked at the power upside the other day, and what he had done in the minors. For 2,200, 2,000 in the outfield, you can definitely include him. He's a lefty going up against the lefty and Steven Matz here, so you don't love the handedness splits. I'm not sure what his splits are like in the minors. Maybe he's a reverse splits guy, and they know that, and I don't. But for those prices, I can definitely put him in lineups. Sebi Zavala, Elvis Andrus, meh. Sebi, if you're playing on DK, you can mix and match in. He had that 6 home runs on the season, had that, 3 home runs against the Yanks that one game? Not a great player. Steven Matz, 5,500, 6,400. Probably only going to go a couple of innings. I think 3-4 is probably your ceiling. Has been working as a bulk reliever in his last handful of starts. 5.02 ERA, 4.12 xFIP, 20.1% strikeout rate, 66 and a third in 10 starts, and 8 bulk relief appearances. But it's like 8 relief appearances in a row where he hasn't gone more than 4 innings. So I don't expect a ceiling on Matz. I think you can target Steven Matz with a lot of these White Sox bats. That's my plan. They're one of those stacks I really want to get to. Not sure what their ownership looks like. Ownership on the one guy you would expect it on, Lubob, who was my home run pick for the day. So, I made a chalky home run pick. Sorry, guys. But I like that spot quite a bit. Everybody else in the single digits, I kind of like this opportunity for some White Sox stacks here going up against Steven Matz. So this is some interest in Lucas Giolito, more on DK at the good price. Definite interest in White Sox bats, probably going to be over the field on White Sox bats. No interest in Steven Matz. Don't think he's going to pitch long enough in this game, and don't think he's been on form or all that good in recent outings. Some interest in Cardinals bats, probably focused on like the top end plus a couple of the lefties like Nolan Gorman in that lineup. Last game on deck. We've almost gotten it done, gang. 12:35, hour to go before lineups are due, before lock. Welcome to Live Before Lock for one game. Logan Gilbert on the bump. 8,600. Incorrect price on DK. Smash the Logan Gilbert button on DK. Love the spot. 10-1 on FanDuel. I'm going to have an aggressive amount of it. My hope is that the public stays away because of the high price. I'll cheat this one too. I'm cheating a lot of these today. I'm so curious, and it's such a deep slate that I think it's relevant, and I think it's okay as long as I don't actually give away their numbers. Ooh, boy, that's going to be a favorable FanDuel spot. It's having the exact effect that I was hoping for. 10-1, nobody wants it on FanDuel. I will absolutely be over the field on Logan Gilbert in this spot against the Astros. Astros have been scuffling. There's no Jose Altuve. There's no Jordan Alvarez in the lineup, I think. Let me make sure. That is correct. The Dubon, Bregman, Tucker, Abreu, Jainer Diaz, Chas McCormick hitting 6th, Jeremy Pena, Jake Myers, Martin Maldonado. So I think if you're going up and down that lineup and you're getting carried away with Astros stacks, you can look at guys like Kyle Tucker for sure. He's a star. 13 home runs, 15 stolen bases on the year. Underperforming for him, but that's still a good season for your average human. Alex Bregman has cooled in terms of who he is back into the career at this point, but 12 home runs, a 108 WRC plus for a guy who's fairly cheap at this point. I think you can definitely go to some shares of Bregman in your Astros stacks, but you don't go out of your way for him. Jeremy Pena not hitting second, hitting down lineup, loses any quality he would have gained from hitting second, which was a little bit, but don't love the hitter. Johnner Diaz, take or leave. Good catcher option, I guess, on DK. Jose Abreu's kind of come back to life, but still not really. I like McCormick. I like him better hitting up lineup a little bit in that 6 spot. So he's kind of interesting, but it's like a mix and match low priority option for Astro stacks. I'm going to have a lot of Logan Gilbert. I would have a ton at that DK price. 24.8% strikeouts, doesn't get himself in trouble. 4.7% walks, a 102 whip, 3.82 ERA, 3.64 xFIP. Gives up a little bit on terms of the barrels, but it hasn't cost him in terms of home runs. Really good pitcher. I really like Logan Gilbert here. Brandon Bielak, I think, is playable. He doesn't project well at all. I think he's more playable than the model suggests, but it's like a DK SP2 7300 kind of a play. I don't like him at 86 on FanDuel. I don't see him getting to it enough. Could he go 5-6 clean innings, a handful of strikeouts against this Mariners team? Sure, absolutely. He's got enough talent to do that, but he hasn't really put it together in the long term this year. 4.67 xFIP, a 3.81 ERA, 17.5% strikeouts. He's had a couple good starts, but a couple bad ones mixed in there as well. And 12.9% barrels, 49.4% hard hits, 90.6 on the exit velo, 4.27% home runs as a result, against a home run focused, free swinging, swing for the fences kind of a club. I think that leads me to some shares of Mariners bats more so than Bielak, but I think he's in play on the DK slate at that price. There's just enough upside, especially on a thin day for value pitching, with a day with a lot of expensive pitchers that we want to create a rotation of. I think you just kind of want to lock in on a couple of your more likely value guys on that kind of a slate so that you can rotate through your high-end pitchers. So Bielak's on that list. Mariners bats, I think there's definite upside. Given his premium contact he's allowed, their home run focus, I think you can drop in some Julio, some Teoscar, Eugenio Suarez, Jared Kelenic, Cal Raleigh, Mike Ford even for 21-24. Dude's got 8 home runs and 87 plate appearances. I think I think I made this comment another time, but I think he went to that same milkshake shop as Brent Rooker and Jake Berger and other guys who are having ridiculous output for no discernible reason this year as quad A talents. Mike Ford definitely on that list, quad A player, but producing right now. 87 plate appearances, 8 homers, 278, 333, 620 slugging percentage, 342 ISO. All the expected numbers are lower than this for Mike Ford, obviously, but a 16.7% barrel rate so far, 48.1% hard hits. Strikes out a ton. He's right on theme with this team. I think he's a usable part. It's difficult to string all those guys together. That's asking for, even if they do well, 2 good spots and 3 zeros in your lineup. But if you're mixing and matching those guys with the top of Julio, Teoscar to a degree, but certainly J.P. Crawford and Ty France and their hit tool and on-base skills, you're doing a little bit better with your stack. So I think you want to include mostly the top 4 there, and then mix and match your way through the bottom half of the lineup. That's the approach to rostering Mariners. Not a great spot, but an okay one. So this was enthusiastically playing Logan Gilbert. Minor shares of value, Bielak darts on the DK slate, not on the FanDuel slate. No real interest for me in the Astros, but I get it if you want to hedge off. The Gilbert ownership's kind of non-existent. A few stacks, just as a cover your bases kind of a play is fine, but they're not great today. And then some interest in the home run upside from the Mariners. That was it, top to bottom. Let's take a quick look at the pitching board and then get out of here. Aaron Nola, top of the board, but not with a bullet because Logan Gilbert's there with him. Separated by 0.13 fantasy points. Take your pick. Either way, mix and match your popularity, mix and match your pricing. I think both guys are very good plays today. Chris Bassett is uncomfortable. Shane Bieber is also uncomfortable, but they're both pulling top of the board projections as well. You got to go to both of those guys in very, very good matchups. Capable pitchers over time. Bieber is an ace over time. High strikeout ace over time. Not the same guy anymore, but could he find something approaching the form that we saw from last year with 25% strikeouts? Yes, certainly. Against KC, absolutely. Chris Bassett needs his innings. Got to get me 7 innings, 7 good, clean innings, handful of strikeouts. If he gets the 7 innings, I got to figure the strikeouts came along for the ride. The quality start did as well, probably the win as well. So I like the Bassett. Well, like is a strong word. I'm playing the Bassett spot. Joe Ryan, definitely interested in Joe Ryan, but you already see a little bit of a dip. Still a very good projection, but dips from the top guys. Same story with Bryce Elder, Tariq Skubal, Jesus Luzardo. Kyle Gibson as a value play, 6,300 is a great value price on the DK slate. I like that spot going up against all those twin strikeouts. That one could go completely sideways. That might be projected a little bit high. But at 63, I think it's worth finding out. 8,000 on FanDuel. I'll have a few shares. Definitely going to have a few Kyle Gibson shares in FanDuel lineups. Ben Lively's on the board for a value play. Domingo Germán is on the board for a value play. Rest of those guys, not as much. Lucas Giolito and Zach Eflin as lower projected expensive guys in bad matchups, I think are both very playable. I just don't know how much you need to get to these two guys based on where they're projected versus all of these guys at similar/better pricing and much better projections and much better matchups. You can maybe take Elder out of that. Elder probably belongs in the mix with Giolito and Eflin a little bit more, considering his matchup. But he's at a cheaper price and a higher projection. So those three guys are challenging. Giolito, Eflin, and Elder are a little bit challenging. Everybody else from like here up, I kind of believe in. It's an interesting pitching slate, gang. Really excited to build lineups for it. With that said, it's 12:45. We've got about 50 minutes to build those lineups. So let's get the hell out of here. I'm going to say thank you very much. I'm going to tell you guys or ask you guys nicely to do me a favor and hit the like button if you haven't already. Bregman's 29. I would, top of my head, I would have said 34. He's 29? No way. That can't be right. I trust you completely. I just need to fact check that because that sounds so wrong. 29. I'll be damned. Wow. That's like Rougned Odor. Finding out that Rougned Odor was only 29 at the start of the season. That melted my brain too. Huh. I thought Bregman was older than that. I really did think he was like 32, 34. Interesting. Good call. Todd Strong with a good call. I like it. And like you said, Berger's going deep. All right. Well, maybe Bregman's going deep too. I appreciate that. Anytime I say something like that, there's insights, there's a correction, throw it into the chat, guys. I always appreciate it. I might fact check the ones that sound strange, but yeah, I always appreciate that. Thank you for the note there, Todd. Awesome. Good stuff. All right, gang, let's go build some lineups. Let's get out of here. I appreciate you. Come on back. We'll be back. It's the All-Star break. We'll be back after the All-Star break. I'll probably throw something up on the site. I don't know if I'm going to do a show for the All-Star Game Showdown. We'll see. But there'll probably be something on the site. At worst, we'll be in the Discord for it. So come hang out with that. Enjoy your All-Star breaks. I'll probably throw some content together for the All-Star, like, some lineup building or sorting or whatever like people have asked for. We'll see what happens. I might also just take the entire thing off and not think about baseball for a few days. Who knows? All right, guys. Good luck. Somebody go win something. I'll see you later.